Hi, everyone. Okay, so thank you for joining us for this AMA for the story team of Colonize Mars. So if it's your first time with us, I'm Stephanie, the community manager. And without further ado, I will invite Maureen and Sean to join me. Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi,
So thank
guys.
you for being there. Yes. So we have received a number of interesting questions. So we will start immediately, I guess, with the first one. And so for both of you, I will ask you to answer this. Who are you? How did you start doing what you do as a writer, as writers? And how long have you been doing it? And leaving you to answer.
All right. Well, I will start. I got a copy of The Hobbit when I was 7 years old, and I said, I'm going to totally go to Middle Earth, but I couldn't figure out how. So I had a plan B, which is I'm going to make up Middle Earth. I stuck with that idea in my head. When I was in college, I did a bunch of live role-playing games and a bunch of RPGs and stuff. But then I put aside all these childish things to set about a serious, earnest, money-making career, which was being a freelance science fiction writer. Yeah. And I finally had my first book come out in, I think, 1992 or so. And I was really fascinated by what was happening with people sort of in my cohort, and wondered if they were good or if they were bad or if they felt about things like I felt about things. So I read a lot of the work by people who were starting out at the same time. And I read this fabulous book called China Mountain Zhang by Maureen McHugh, and I thought it was incredible. And I wrote her a fan letter, and that is how how we started. And Anton, we're gonna circle back on the Ida question. So I'll get you later.
And I was toiling in the freelance science fiction writers world, which turns out not to be a great way to get rich. And Sean had this great project with this guy, Steven Spielberg. And I was fascinated by it. And I said, Sean, if you ever need a writer for one of these projects, contact me. And that cost me 15 years of my life, would you say?
I'm so sorry.
So I started as a writer and then started working in interactive with Sean. And now here we are, colonizing Mars.
Whoa. Yeah, indeed. That's quite a trip from here to there.
First one we worked on together was a project called I Love Bees for Halo 2, which old school gamers, if there are any in the chat, may have heard of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So next question, and that one will be for you, Sean, I guess. This is how did you form your team? So have you ever met each other in person? Has there been any clashing of ideas, and how did you manage that?
I worked with Hunter at a company called Magic Leap, doing AR stuff. And we had talked there several times about how fun it would be to do something a little magic and put a little story in. But then Hunter started Colonize Mars and came. I'm getting the red wine question. It's 9 o'clock in the morning where I am, so it feels like early for breaking out the red wine. Hunter came and talked about maybe doing some story for Colonize Mars, and told me a little bit about the project and shared a little bit about the vision. And I thought it seemed really interesting. So although I haven't written a lot of hard science fiction, I like it. And the first person I thought to call was Maureen. And as will come up later, both Maureen and I are married to scientists who like space, and it felt like it would be a fun project to work on. And then we have a couple of other writers on the team who, backing up, I'm just seeing the comment from Second Renaissance, artificial intelligence. Don't know if it's the reference, but if you're talking about the Spielberg film, yeah. We did a giant online project that's now known as the first alternate reality game for the movie AI. That's how this sort of all started. So when it came to form the team, my first call was Maureen, and then my second was a woman who named Hillary, who is a younger writer, because I feel like it's important to have not everybody on a project be old, and because I value her insights. And then the last member of the team who isn't on the stream is Magda, who was finishing a degree at university and called to interview me about how you do ARGs. And I called her back the next day and said, how'd you like to have a bit of a job working on Mars? So Magda has been part of the team. When you guys are playing with maps going around the surface of Mars for our sort of run through of the mini game, that's Magda who's making those. So although Hillary and Magda aren't on the stream today, they're both important members of the team. Are there clashing ideas and how do we manage it? We're pretty collegial, and we try to have the format that it doesn't matter who comes up with an idea, it's just the best idea wins. In case of ties, I win. So.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah, that's true. He wins. Yeah. So, but
that's not a
usually
bad thing, actually.
experience talk. Okay. So next one, I guess, will be for you, Maureen, and it's about the process. So what's your process in coming up with lore?
It's really interesting because I didn't write all of the lore, but I wrote most of the very early lore about who was founding the ISA. And one of the first things I looked at is, who are our players? And this is a game in which the players are the ISA, and therefore I wanted the characters to reflect who was actually involved in the game. And the process of coming up with lore is very driven by Hunter, because Hunter has a very, very strong vision for what the ISA is, and what colonizing Mars is, and how the future is going to look. So a lot of my coming up with lore was doing a lot of research online, particularly, and trying to match both the player base and the world kind of that Hunter was making, which is very based in reality. And then Sean did an awful lot of the locations of the facilities and the way the ISA programs ran. So the process of coming up with lore was really very collaborative and really fun.
Well,
if I
that's
could
important.
just add, I see Second Renaissance saying, do you plan to add events on Earth that affect Martian colony formation? And I just wanted to call out, while we're talking about the lore, that we know we have a dozen characters or more with quite a lot of backstory that are ISA founders or at mission control that you guys haven't even mentioned or have barely heard referenced. And there are plot lines for multiple of them that are waiting to come to life. So absolutely, I think as we go on, the relationship between Mars and Earth, as will happen in real life when we're on Mars, it's going to be complicated.
Mission Control is full of really, really interesting people, but they're very professional, so you haven't seen much of that yet.
Yeah, they need to be professional.
It's their job. People's lives depend on it.
Yeah. Okay, so next one, and I guess this one will be for both of you, and I will so give you the stage for it. And it's that, do you have any background in any branch of science? And how did that help in creating the law for Colonize Mars? So leaving you so that you can.
You start, Maureen. You have more.
I did 2 years of pre-med, so I have a bit of biology background. But what I thoughtfully did is I married an engineer. And I will say that most of our background in science is adoring people who are really interested in science. And so one of the reasons that we both got involved in this is because we had people we could turn to and say, so how would you create gravity on a ship going to Mars given today's technology? And my husband said, oh, here's 3 ways.
Yeah, my answer is a mirror image of Maureen's, in that I am also married to a scientist, in this case, a neurobiologist, but with a lifelong, deep interest in space and space travel. So there's a lot of backstops there. And then after our spouses, my dearest friend is all around genius named Philip Freeman, who has, when I was 24 years old, I would be going to Philip saying, hey, I'm writing this science fiction book. Can you work out the relativity mechanics for a quick trip to Venus and back? It needs to take about an hour, and I need to know how much time dilation will happen. He'll say, okay, and grab a napkin and work that out for me. So all these years later, Philip is an award-winning science educator, and is associated with several prestigious institutions. But he's also everything that we write. He looks at, and because mercifully he is also a science fiction fan, he's pretty good at bending reality to sort of match what makes for a good story.
He's a solid backstop, because he won't let us do anything that's impossible, but he understands at a really interesting level what's fun and enjoyable. Yeah, you're an ISA specialist, Anton. I don't know what you do. I'm not involved personally in the day-to-day stuff in the ISA. I'm more of a consultant.
Yeah, we do have a number of specialists already in the Discord.
Yes.
And they are working very hard to get that promotion, and they should.
It should.
Yeah. Okay, so next one, and I guess I will ask it to you, Maureen, is how hard is it to use scientific fact as a basis for fiction?
Well, I'm not going to say it's super easy, but I'm going to also say that one of the things that was interesting for me to find out is that artists often work best with constraints. Like the reason the sonnet is such a successful poetic form is it gives you like a frame, and it says you have to work within these parameters. It has to be, iambic pentameter and 14 lines and all that sort of thing. And so I like science, and using that as kind of a set of rules for me kind of makes a better story than if I can do anything. Robert Frost used to say that free verse was like playing poetry was like playing tennis without a net, by which he didn't mean it was easier. He meant it was harder. So, yeah. The other thing is a lot of what we received as scientific fact had already been figured out by Hunter, because Hunter has a very strong vision and works very much in this world. Everything from SpaceX and NASA to talks and how you make spacesuits. And he actually provided us with such a strong framework that it was easy to go forward. Adding to that, that the nice thing about science is sometimes the science itself gives you plot points. If you know the science of Mars, you know that Mars itself presents certain difficulties to colonization. Well, that's fun to think about, particularly when you have somebody like Philip. You can say, well, what do we do about perchlorates? What do we do about radiation? What do we do about how much energy they need? He can, these create the actual story. So I find using scientific fact as a basis for a fictional story is actually a generating machine. It gives me ideas.
Great. Yeah. So that's part of the universe that already exists and that causes problems by itself. That's,
exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it as fan fiction for reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I will go to you for the next one, Sean. So this one is, and let me give you the full stage. How long do you research scientific concepts before writing the story? Or do you research only when you get to that point in the story?
The answer is both. Usually we're doing it's an iterative process. You come up with what might happen, then you research it, then you realize that what you had in mind isn't going to work, but there's this other way that you might be able to do it. And then when you get to a particular point in the story, then you usually have to go down a little deeper. And sorry, laughing at Anton's comment. Yeah, what can I tell you? Space is tough. So there's an iterative process, to go back to the question, in which you're a little informed by the science and you keep checking your story points by the science. If you think of the redshift where they're going into the cave, so all the way through developing the story of Alex and Aurora going into the cave, I was also writing Lewis, our astrobiologist, and Philip, and talking about how would we look for life, what kind of life would we expect to find, what are the dangers. They were the ones who pointed out, along with Christine, my wife, the dangers of contaminating the site, and how do you tell whether something is life native to Mars or not. I'm so sorry, in the course of the last AMA, that you didn't manage to get Lewis to let off the leash. I was asking him, so what kind of native Martian life could you find? And he had this wonderful fantasia about going deep into the caves and finding mats of chemoautotrophic organisms being grazed on by Martian snails. So with any luck.
Yeah, the Martian snail, that would have been fun.
Second Renaissance, just the topic of what have been stories about life on Mars, and is this one better or worse? I won't jump in and say for sure about whether they're better or worse, but if you're interested, probably the benchmark in science fiction for this kind of story is Kim Stanley Robinson's Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars. if you want to watch someone really, really think carefully about what it would mean to colonize Mars, that's well worth a read.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. And first of all, hello, Philip. I'm also going to say that there have been echoes through our discussions of Red Mars, although we're not going in that direction. For one thing, there were things that Stan didn't know, Ken Stanley Robinson, because the science wasn't there yet. And
Yep.
he was working with the cutting edge of science with Mars. And it's also a good reminder that we're probably getting a lot wrong.
But if you, not to spoil too much, but if you watched Foundation, the Apple TV show, they stole the most epic moment of their pilot episode from Red Mars. So I will say no more, but they filmed something that does not happen in the Foundation books from Stan's book.
They added something to Asimov's work.
They added a lot to Asimov's work. like women.
Like women, for example.
Yeah, true. That part also.
But I do want to give a call out to Philip Freeman, who joined. That is the Philip Freeman that we have been using mercilessly to help us not make too many dreadful mistakes and to come up with some brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
Second Renaissance, Asimov, Heinlein, Clarke were, of course, formative when I first started reading, and then Anne Bradbury when I first started reading and writing science fiction.
Super fast story of no immediate relevance. I've almost never been to the east side of the United States. I'm a Western boy, both in Canada and the US. So I was an adult by the time I ever got to New York. I got off the plane and I'm walking around Manhattan and I'm looking up at all the skyscrapers thinking, this is amazing. I didn't actually think I'd like New York, but it turns out it's awesome. So I went to sleep that night, and for the first and only time in my life, I was visited by Isaac Asimov in a dream. And Asimov said, come on, kid, I'm going to show you my city, which made me feel like I had my very own guardian angel in New York.
Nice.
So that is my Isaac Asimov story.
Yeah.
I also had a friend whose mom got French kissed by Isaac Asimov, but it's a different story.
Let's not open that can of worms.
Indeed.
Okay, so okay, next question for you, Maureen. So here, has there ever been a time when the science you added to a story was contested or proven false by someone, a science expert, perhaps?
All the time. And in the particular case of Colonize Mars, Sean came up with this incredibly cinematic, brilliant idea. My husband is, among other things, the guy who ran and maintained the 3D printer at his last two jobs, as well as being a design engineer. And Sean thought it would be very cool if we had this scene where they did a 3D printed spacesuit. I mean, there was a big dramatic reveal. It was the coolest moment ever. And all the science people said, nope. They would not 3D print. We are not anywhere near the kind of complicated 3D printing that would work for a spacesuit. And it was terrible because we really, really, really loved the moment. Did so much in terms of story building and character building, dramatic reveal. Damn science.
I love how the question was, has there ever been a time that the science you added to a story was proven false? Immediately comes up with an example of the time I added something that was proven false.
Well, that's because you get all the decision making at the end. So I have to get back. But no, I've often actually, in science fiction, nobody ever sends me fan letters except Sean, unless I've screwed up something, and then I get fan mail. Yes. And it's like, did you know that such and such and such and such doesn't happen at such and such? The biggest two are actually not science. They're, if you're a writer, never use a gun in a story unless you have done your research, because people in America like guns and know a lot about them and will write you letters. And the other one is I once referred to a movie, Forbidden Planet, as in black and white because we have a very old, washed out version of it on videotape. And the editor of the magazine said, I'm not forwarding you the 400 emails.
Ouch.
Yeah. But yeah, one of the problems with writing science fiction is I have a story in which I have a biological process by which you can regenerate cells, which involves telomeres. And it turns out that that isn't how you would regenerate cells at all. But when telomeres were first discovered, we did think that if you could add them, that cells would then miraculously regenerate. So not only does it get proven false because somebody comes back and says to me, oh, you screwed that up, it also gets proven false because science marches on.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is not a problem unique to writers. In fact, it's much worse for scientists who get proven wrong by scientists all the time. It's literally the job description.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. And well, that's a nice moment, I guess, to shift more to question about the fiction part. And I will stay with you, Maureen, for this one, which is what is the difference in writing stories for a book or movie versus writing lore for a game?
Well, lore is world building. And writing lore is really fun. There are people who hate it. Part of one half of the team that is the writer of The Expanse, James S.A. Corey, Daniel Abraham hates world building. Ty Frank, the other half of James S.A. Corey, loves world building to the point that that's where The Expanse comes from. But I really like world building. In fact, one of the things I had to learn as a writer is to stop world building and actually write the game or the book or the story. Because in this case, particularly, the lore is so important because the players live in the world. The game exists in the world. Mars is a character in this story. And the science of Mars is so important. But the actual story is about human beings, about people figuring out things and having different ideas about how things happen. Writing lore for a game, though, is a whole completely different. Interactivity is a whole completely different thing. At that point, it's less and less about the story I come up with. When I teach game narrative design, I keep telling my students, look, you tell the lore in the mechanic and in the setting, but the core of the story is what the players do. That's what they're really interested in. And so if you have this elaborate backstory and it's not fun to do, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's very true. That absolutely needs to be fun to do.
I think the last thing you said there is subtle but foundational. When you're writing lore for a novel, you're writing it to support a story. When you're writing lore for a game, that's going to be expressed in the interaction mechanic. So story lore that has no expression in a game is not as interesting. And story lore needs to be powerful, needs to somehow enter the interaction model. I think this is a super smart point.
I mean, the example is Halo. The interaction in Halo is that you can move, you can jump, you can fight. So the characterization of the Master Chief is basically, it's really hard to play Halo if you want to play as a pacifist. Is he a deep character? No. But he's a real character in that what he can do shapes how you play.
The other thing that is sort of, I'm going to to touch very delicately on what Second Renaissance is talking about. Writing lore for a game is different than writing lore for a movie. Writing lore for a crypto game is different than writing lore for a game, because the fact that we are creating story with assets that may have monetary value to someone means that we have to be careful in ways we don't normally have to be, because we can't. If I just say, it'd be cool next week, let's have a volcano that wipes out a bunch of stuff. I can't wipe out a bunch of players' actual value, and yet players following the story need to feel that the stakes are real. So it's a really interesting line to walk, that we're learning right along with you, honestly. We're going to try not to have the story unbalance the game. But as someone was pointing out in chat, there will come a moment in the not too distant future where listening to the redshift for the weather report is going to matter to your gameplay, right? You're going to be making decisions about your gameplay based on what might be coming down the pike in terms of weather, in terms of, where you're deploying assets and stuff. So syncing the story with the gameplay is something that we're on. I don't want to talk in any more detail about that right now, other than to assure you that we take it, we're thinking about it carefully, and we're not going to be cavalier about jerking around your stuff.
We have players that play crypto games as part of how they make their rent. And we feel a strong responsibility to players to not frivolously fuck with it.
At the same time, will there be things...
Tom. One of the game designers. And Tom is the person who taught us, no, people will be affected by this.
One of the things, just last point that Nemanja is making, and I'm sorry if I butchered your name there, 100% we expect plot points in the story to eventually arise out of what players are doing. Like, if we don't do that, then we will have collectively this won't have happened the way it should happen. Eventually, your choices and decisions will fuel the story for us going forward.
Wow. Well, that's impatient to see that. Okay, so next question, and where was I? Because I lost my thread with all those.
That was about lore.
Yeah, that was the one about law and what was the difference. Yeah, and this one will be for Sean, in fact. And okay, so I'm giving you the full stage now. And what is interactive fiction, and did you come up with it? Or is it different from choose your own ending stories?
So interactive fiction, I would love to have come up with it. But as long as there have been actors playing with an audience, there has been some kind of interactive fiction. We love to do this stuff. There was an explosion coming out of the early RPGs with Greyhawk and D&D and all the things that proliferated out from that, with this kind of storytelling where you didn't quite know where you had a sense of where things were, but you didn't know when you swung your sword if you were going to slay the dragon or not. That made for this kind of strange rolling narrative. And I want to, I'm so much older than most of the people in this chat. I was about to say, think back to when you were a kid, and then realize that when I was a kid was a lot longer before you. But when you ask about the difference between interactive fiction and a choose your own ending story, think about that literally. It's 1980, which I can remember, even though you can't. And there are choose your own adventure books, and there's playing in a D&D campaign, and they feel wildly different. A choose your own adventure book can be fun, but it's kind of a gag. You know, it doesn't feel rich because all the possible choices have already been created before you bought the book. And as a matter of principle, when you're writing multiple endings, they all have to be more or less satisfying-ish as a writer, because you can't give the audience an experience that they picked the wrong one, unless it's just a pass-fail. Whereas in interactive fiction, hopefully, as with your D&D campaign, what you come up with is better than what either the dungeon master or the players started with at the beginning. So to give a tiny example of how is it different, for those of you who are watching on Tuesday, there was Ida trapped under the surface in the rover, and one of the players said, for the love of God, instead of worrying about getting the rover out, why don't you just break out the front screen? And we had the character of Alex say, that makes a ton of sense. I'm going to take that to the team right now, and we're going to switch the plan and do that. That's what interactive fiction should feel like.
100%.
And S7, the rest of his name or her name is in Greek
Yeah,
characters.
it's
However
S7
well I
Kairos.
pronounce your name, Mr. Namanja, I'm not getting S7's name. But he impacted that story. He was there as an ISA stakeholder talking to Alex, and Alex heard him and did a thing. And that's when interactive fiction gets really fun. When I was in college, I was running LARPs to put myself through college. Hooray, 1985. And I had no idea that that was going to come to be a major, important professional skill. But this project for AI that I mentioned earlier was sort of conceived as, what if we built the entire world of the Spielberg film online and then ran a giant role-playing campaign through it with 100,000 people? So I was the writer on the first of that kind of interactive fiction in that venue. And when we were working through our story with Ida, you got a bit of a taste of what that's like.
Wow, great. And indeed, so one of our players did save Ida.
That's right.
Yeah, and that was the goal here anyway.
Well, she's a smart cookie and she'd done some smart things herself, but it helped. It made a difference to getting her out, getting her to safety.
Okay, and so the next one, I guess I will ask to both of you, and that is that with all the research that you must have done in coming up with the story for Colonize Mars, do you think that there is really a possibility of being multiplanetary? And I leave you the stage.
Maureen, you may be muted.
Thank you. I do. My mother was born in 1915, and when she was born, there were no airplanes, and she flew to LA. So she flew much around the world. I find it hard to predict the future as a science fiction writer, and I want to say that I think that there's a strong reason for being multiplanetary. Many strong reasons. So much of our technology changed with the massive influx of money into the space program, for better or for worse. And right now, all of humanity's eggs are in one basket. And it's a very large basket, but we're beginning to see that it is just one basket here on Earth. And a woman named Annalee Newitz wrote a book about surviving extinction events. And she says that we should scatter, thrive, and remember. And I incorporated that ethos into a couple of the characters on Colonize Mars because, yes, I do. Do I know that we're going to become multiplanetary? In a sense, we already are. We've been to Mars. We've been to the moon. Sean?
Yeah. I'm probably not going to volunteer to be on the first flight because I grew up in the Canadian equivalent of Siberia. So I've spent a lot of time in cold. But yeah, I think we can. I think the challenges are ones that we can get by. We have a world-renowned astrobiologist who thinks we can, so that's good enough for me. And then I would say that there's a very, very compelling historical argument, which is if you look at how life has evolved, all life started on the sea. All life started in the ocean. You, right now, every one of you watching this is a fish in a spacesuit. You are a bag of leather full of seawater, which got up and moved itself and planted itself as a hab on dry land. So I don't know, it's already happened. I don't see why it wouldn't happen again.
Wow. Yes.
I just got chills.
Yeah, I'm a bag of salted water, as everyone. Yeah, that's a nice comparison. That's very interesting. Okay, and then, well, next one, I guess I will ask to both of you too. And this is, what are the challenges of creating a world on Mars, fiction and non-fiction, based on how the team has discovered what the team has discovered through the course of your time with Colonize Mars? And
You want to start, Marie?
Sure. One of the things that Sean and I have talked about a lot is that science fiction is never actually about the future. Science fiction writers live right now, and what we're always commenting on is right now. And right now, what Hunter created, I mean, this is an English language centric project, and a lot of the people in it, not all, but a lot of the people working on it speak English as their first language. And Sean and I are both North Americans. But we really wanted, per Hunter's vision, a world audience. And we wanted to reflect the incredible optimism and the incredible diversity within within the game space, because we thought that was actually the world today. And Second Renaissance, yes, Jules Verne created things that humanity use every day, and so did Arthur C. Clarke. But there are also huge, vast things in those stories that don't make any sense as the future. And we tend to cherry pick the ones that worked. But I don't think that that's what this story is about. I don't think that Colonize Mars, the story, is about what the future will be. It's about imagining that future so that we could see going forward to it. It also means that we have to deal with things like the fact that what time is it in the Philippines when the red shift airs, Sean?
Usually it's just past midnight when we go live.
Yeah, so there's a lot of challenges with working with a story which takes place all around the world and on another planet. And I'll be honest with you, some of the time stuff we just fudge.
But to talk about some both technical and more abstract things. Technically, sitting in, for those of you who are following the first couple of redshifts, when we had multiple astronauts commenting, some on the ship, some from mission control, and some from the planet, and poor Magda keeping track of, okay, I need a 10-minute delay on the planet, an 8-minute delay on the ship, but the people on mission control have no delay on their comments. So we have to keep track of everything so that it's running in the right time. And then to Maureen's larger point that we also, it is my experience that it's helpful for something like the redshift that you know when it's going to be every week, so you know when to tune in. And at the same time, no matter what time we pick, it will be terrible for kind of the majority of the world. It's one of the reasons that this week's ran across 7 or 8 hours is just a chance for people who normally aren't awake or are in school or are at work or just have a chance to drop in and follow. We can't do that every week, but we wanted there to be a moment when they could. Keeping up with the languages, we have a certain number of languages on the team, but not nearly as many as the players have, and not nearly as many as the imaginary astronauts have. And we don't want to screw it up. And then the other thing we have to work with is it won't feel good if we're just glaringly wrong about something, the facts, when we don't know them. But if you think, for instance, going back again to Alex and Aurora in the cave and the biology of life on Mars and the chances of finding life on Mars, Perseverance already has samples that will probably answer a lot of questions. I think the odds that there has been life on Mars are extremely high. Whether there is still Martian-based life on Mars, more problematic, but not impossible. I think Lewis put the odds at somewhere between 25 and 50%. But the fact is, we might all wake up tomorrow and whatever we wrote, someone at NASA or the ESA says, we now have definitive proof that you are wrong. And the last one that touches on this is what Tom was talking about. The challenges of creating a world on Mars, which is fictional and non-fictional, because the cards might be fictional, but the money's not that the players spent. That is not fictional. So it's a very interesting mixed space, but it's different from creating a story for any other medium that I know.
Great. So a new challenge.
But also, I want to say something back to Nemanja, who I saw Sean laugh when he saw Nemanja said, you must be a polyglot. Nemanja, we're North Americans. We're terrible at languages in this country. And Sean was in the part of Canada that paid lip service to French.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I have 2 questions remaining, which are more really about what happened with the astronauts. So the first one, and well, I guess I will ask those questions to Sean. And the first one is, will Ida and Gareth go back together?
You know, that dude's going to get off a rocket when Mission 4 lands, and Ida's going to be there. And, you know, You tell me from what you know about Ida. Are sparks going to fly? I don't know. How's it all going to work out? I mean, as our friends, wish them well, but couldn't tell you for sure. I'm fairly confident that some of you will have something to do with it, though.
Okay, let me shift directly to the next one, which is, and that's very interesting. Will there be an alien storyline or something mystically alien to research or discover?
Alex thinks so, and Alex is not alone. Those who are members of the Xenoscope Society believe that there is something more, and let's just say that there are powerful forces within the Colonize Mars community which think there might be something more going on as well. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so a lot of suspense. Yeah, the Xenoscope and so on. Yeah, that's. I'm impatient to see it, but we need to go through it at the right rhythms for it to enjoy it fully too. So that was. I've gone through all the questions I had received. Is there anything you would like to add to sum up, both of you?
I really want to talk about Hunter's vision, because I think as much as the actual science, and as rigorous as we try to be about the actual science, the real core of this project is that it is a simulation for colonizing Mars. And art is not as powerful as I would like it to be, but one of the things it does is it allows us to imagine things that we can then achieve. A writer named Thomas Dish has a collection of essays called The Dreams Our Stuff is Made Of. I think I've got that right. And what I always think of is, for a long time circulating on the net was a picture of Leonard Nimoy standing on a street corner in like 1985 with a flip phone, which looked like a communicator. And then the people who designed some of the first flip phones talked about how much the Star Trek communicator influenced the design of flip phones. The fact that they had seen it allowed them to start thinking about how to make it real. That's not the only way that flip phones or that mobile phones came into, but it was an important part. And Hunter's vision of a collaborative, world-driven future in which we can leave this planet and live somewhere else is a very, very, very powerful and optimistic vision that I think it's a good dream to put out there to hopefully make stuff out of.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that is nice, Star Trek was celebrated in 1967 because you had, someone from America and someone from Japan and someone from Russia and someone who was Black and someone from Africa, and all these people were working together, and that vision that people of good will from across the world could combine their efforts to accomplish a mighty vision is very inspiring. And I think it's a huge part of why we're here as a writing team, is we wanted to be part of that vision. We wanted to add a little thing to it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, but I cry easily. That's okay.
It's also true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So thanks again for joining today and answering those questions, and also the question that we had in the chat. So, and thanks to everyone in the chat for asking questions and interacting. And I see is necessary to leave the earth at one moment. Our way of life is so consuming. Okay, so yeah, that's the discussion continuing about, do we need another place as a security?
Nemanja, I'm hoping that what part of Scatter, Thrive, and Remember is that we remember the things that we did here and we find a way to to have a lighter footprint in terms of resources as we expand.
And a last thing I'll say, just small, once again, these are collaborative efforts. It isn't just Maureen and I who are working on this. There are people who aren't on this talk. There's Philip doing the science. There's Christine and Bob who have been with us from the beginning on both story and science. Hillary and Magda work hours and hours every week to put the Redshift together.
And Emma is amazing. I'm just going to say.
Emma, what a girl. She's the best.
Yeah.
Good giving and gaining.
So just because we happen to be the faces on the screen doesn't mean this is the whole team.
Not even remotely. No, and Tom and the whole game design team and Stephanie, who basically lives on Mars.
Yeah, right now I basically spend all my days, but yeah, I enjoy it. So it's not, I'm living in it. I'm living it. So that's great. And oh, I see. No, we have lots of comments arriving.
Second Renaissance. Riot doesn't need your money.
Yeah. Hi, Madeleine. We all live on Mars.
Yeah, you guys do live on Mars. You're all working the Redshift. That's the cool thing. That's why this dream is made from really interesting, and I think stuff that's never been combined in just the way that this has been combined. I think this is the right moment to make this possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Emma's voice is charming, and she's completely astonished by the reaction she received from you about it. And well, she did not join today because, you know, in universe and
what with
in real life, yeah, we don't want to make
jobs, you know.
Yeah, and that's our second job too.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy that you like it, and she's very happy that you like it, and it's a real pleasure to work with her and to work with you also, Maureen, Sean, and Magda, which is not there today. And well, I guess we're gonna wrap up here, or we can continue for the whole morning for you. And so see everyone in the Discord in a few minutes. See Sean and Maureen in the Slack in a few minutes. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, guys.
See you. Bye.